after several years, you're like, I missed it.
But you have an office here. You can always just
Yeah, we
drop
have an
by
office here, but whenever I go, it's very not a lot of people. It's
especially
like
now, right?
everyone got used to working from home.
Yeah, it's the convenience, and you don't have to commute. And
Yeah.
I find like I'm personally even more productive just because I can actually get some focus time.
Oh, for sure. Sorry? Less than 1 minute. Oh, okay, cool.
How many students are in this cohort?
So there are around 9 now. We're supposed to have 8 evaluations.
Oh, okay. Because of the pandemic, I guess they're not. Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, hello everyone and welcome to this afternoon's panel conversation, the nuts and bolts of business analytics, managing people and technology. We are streaming on YouTube live from Concordia University's fourth space, which is located on unceded indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And as caretakers for the lands and waters we are meeting on, we are grateful to the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation for their teachings about the earth and our relations. For those of you new to Fourth Space, in person or over Zoom, welcome in. We're so glad that you could join us today. We do work with our university community here at Concordia in order to bring people together around the research projects, initiatives, and dialogues and development across the university. So to that end, we're very fortunate to collaborate with our colleagues from JMSB to bring you this panel conversation here today. I'll just mention that if you're in this space and would like to jump into the Q&A, please raise a hand and we'll get a microphone to you so that we can hear you in Zoom. And those of you joining us on Zoom, you're more than welcome to raise a virtual hand and pop into the conversation during the Q&A, or pop your comments or questions into the chat and I'll be happy to read them out for our panelists. All right, on that note, it's my pleasure to welcome in our panelists and our moderator. I'll pass it over to you now, Sajid. Welcome.
Thanks, Anna. Welcome everybody, both in person and online. My name is Suchit Ahuja. I am the Director of the Business Analytics and Technology Management MSc program in the John Molson School. This is our newest program and we are here to celebrate the launch, and it's great to have students in the audience. One of the goals here is to spread awareness about business analytics and technology management, and also to sort of bring together experts from industry on business analytics and technology management. So we have two of our alumni with us today. that have been associated with the John Molson School, and it's a pleasure to welcome both Kira and Theodore. So I'm going to formally introduce you here. Kira is the Director of Digital Analytics and Integration at CIBC. She is a John Molson School of Business graduate with a Master's of Science in Management. For more than 10 years, she has been a leader in technology, web analytics, and business intelligence in the financial services, advertising, and telecom industries. Welcome, Kira. Theodore Zambalis is an MBA from the John Molson School of Business, with a career spanning over 20 years in engineering, business technology strategy, and management. Theodore has specialized in the last decade in the world of data with financial services industry while working with Deloitte, National Bank, and Manulife. Currently, he is the Director of Data and Insights at Manulife. His expertise is in master data management, data warehousing, data streaming, and business intelligence. So with that, I would like to extend a warm welcome and thank you for taking the time for speaking with us and with our students. I think this is going to be a fantastic journey, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin by sort of setting the stage. One of the first questions that people have is, what does analytics really mean, right? So let's begin there. Analytics might mean different things to different organizations, and even within one organization, analytics could mean different things to different teams. So I would like to kind of just ask you to go back a few years when maybe analytics was not called analytics, right? And talk to us about how all this started, what was your role like, what was the evolution of your role, and what do you do now? So maybe we'll start with Kira first.
Sure. Let's see. This works. Perfect. Thank you very much, and it's great to be back here. Just like what was mentioned, I'm a fellow graduate of the MSc program, MSc in Management. I graduated in 2012, so it's been exactly 10 years. It's a 10-year anniversary. I started as a data analyst at Cisco. Before that, I was actually working in logistics and trading, so nothing to do with data. So back in 2012, I think everyone who was getting into the data analytics field actually didn't have any bachelor's of analytics or master's of analytics. Those things just simply didn't exist. This industry overall is very young, and everyone who got in there probably 10, 12, 20 years ago, we all had to sort of wing it because there was no point of reference. There was no nobody you can sort of job shadow or get education on. So I did take a few stats courses. I don't know if TechMac is still here, but I do remember.
Just retired.
Just retired. Oh, congratulations on his retirement. But so I knew a little bit about modeling. I knew a little bit about data analysis. I had to do my own data crunching for this thesis. We had to write our own research and publish it, and obviously defend it to get a degree. So I was very excited about that, and I thought that's something I can apply in business world. I got a job as a data analyst. I think overall that project was a failure, to say the least. It was just very early stages of modeling. We were modeling, I believe it was a propensity to buy model for data centers. It's a Cisco Systems, the big IT company. After that, I moved on to Autotrader. Again, for those of you who are probably older than 30, you may remember those magazines kind of scattered around outside the Autotrader, the advertising company for cars and dealerships. So obviously there are no magazines anymore. Right now they're all fully online. And that was my first ever exposure and experience with the digital data. They have a website, they have a mobile app. I was hired to do segmentation modeling, marketing analytics, and stuff like that. So it was more related to sales. However, I started doing a little bit of data analysis related to a digital space. So we were looking at traffic coming to our website, where people click and so on. And I got really, really excited with that. And ever since, I've been in digital analytics. So I moved on to CIBC, and that's where my current role is. I'm a director of digital analytics. I started there as a senior analyst. I've been promoted a few times, and I've been enjoying this journey for about 5 years, five and a half. So right now I'm in digital space. We've gone through pandemic. We've seen a lot of changes, transformational in business. specifically to the banking industry, we've seen a huge increase in online registrations for the apps. We've seen a huge increase in traffic and transactions and so on. So it's been exciting, and I'm looking forward to what's next to come.
Thank you. Theodore?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, super interesting background, and actually mine is a little different. So I find that we'll probably bring a couple of different perspectives to the discussion. So I started off actually here at Concordia. I won't say how many years ago because it's a bit more, but I started off in engineering, and I also completed an MBA along the way. I worked in more pure engineering, software development, before making the pivot over to consulting, business consulting, so advising companies, working with Deloitte in all sorts of strategy projects, but that included several projects that were specifically related to data. After working in consulting for several years, I switched over and worked with National Bank, specifically in the field of data. So I had roles within National Bank, and then eventually with Manulife. And so, you know, both with National Bank and with Manulife, it was very data focused. I came back to my roots a bit, and my roles were more on the IT side, architecture, solution architecture, but also leveraging I guess what I'd learned along the way in terms of working with Deloitte, you know, understanding the strategy, developing the overall strategies for you know, different data roadmaps and the project. So I guess I would say I bring the strategy, the management, and the technical and architecture side to my roles. What I was going to say, you know, you talk about the term analytics, and yeah, that is a word that's used quite loosely. So it means different things to different people. When I think of analytics, or just data and analytics in general, I think of data management, which is, you know, really about bringing the data together, bringing it into data warehouses, into data marts, data governance, which is many different things, but for me, data governance, most importantly, is well defining the data, making sure that it has really good definitions. Then BI and reporting, which is a field in itself in a way. So BI and reporting is about just creating those reports that people need day to day, month to month, or giving them the data and allowing them to create their own views and their own reports. And then the last one that I think about is advanced analytics. So building out models, you know, machine learning or statistics, or all those subjects that, you know, data scientists are heavily involved in. And at Manulife and at, you know, many organizations, we have specialists across those 4 different areas that you know, on a day-to-day basis, I think I'm involved in a little bit of all of them, some more than others, but we also have specialists for each of those subjects. Yeah. Back to
Great,
you.
thank you. So it helps because, you know, especially for our students, it's great to see where a student's journey might start and eventually make its way to work into analytics and data, which, you know, might not seem, you know, that it's a glamorous, you know, job at first, but I guess now a lot of people are taking notice of, like, okay, there's multiple things that we can do with analytics and technology management, right? So I think this is perfect examples, 2 great examples of how the journey might start and evolve. And I'm going to come back to some of the themes that you mentioned through the questions, but it's a perfect segue onto the next part, which is I was going to ask both of you to share with us a couple of use cases of what, you know, your organizations or specifically your business units are doing with data. So again, whether it's predictive modeling, whether it's machine learning, you know, different types of AI mechanisms, whatever it might be. So just to sort of set the stage for our students in terms of what it means to work with data. So maybe we can go with Theodore first.
Sure, yeah. I'll just go with my current roles at Manulife, but we some of the key use cases is we work with companies, and we offer insurance to companies who in turn offer that insurance to their employees. So they want tons of just reports, different kinds of reports that allow them to do their job on a day-to-day basis. So just that was actually my previous role, and that was a lot of day-to-day work and making sure that they had the right reports at the right time. So that was one use case. The other, within the same business unit in analytics, one of the interesting use cases is around disability insurance. So when it comes to disability insurance, both from a human perspective, but also from an insurance perspective, the name of the game is you want to prevent as much as possible for folks from having to go on disability insurance at all, if it's possible. So that's where analytics plays a role, to look for markers, to look for different, see what the data is telling us about how someone might be making their claims. And there's some markers that help us predict that, oh, someone's about to go on disability. What resources from their benefits plan could we bring to them to help prevent them from going on disability, or to reduce the amount of time that they spend on disability? Unfortunately, the more someone is on disability, the more likely it is that that they'll stay on disability, and sometimes for life. So that's a role somewhere where analytics plays a huge role. Another one is fraud detection. So catching those bad actors right in their tracks, and using the data to really figure out those patterns, and feed that to our fraud analytics team, who I actually work closely with, to prevent fraud and prevent the costs going up for everyone who's using insurance.
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah, it's interesting. Working with data is never the same. I would say that there's always something new. Like I mentioned, I work in the digital space, right? So the difference for us is actually we are responsible for collecting the data. Is this working? Yeah, okay. So our team does put the tags on the website, so in order for us to actually see customer behavior on our side, and the mobile app as well. So the first step for us is to work with the stakeholders in order to understand the requirements for the project, and implement those tagging requirements from the analytics perspective. So that's how we get the data. We use Adobe, Google Analytics. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the tool and the tag stack. But that's not the most exciting part. When it gets really interesting when you start looking at the data. So our use cases are very diverse, and it depends on who the client is. So we have internal clients at the bank. So for example, owners of certain projects, they're implemented a new page on the site, they have a new campaign going on, and they're selling a new credit card, and they're interested in how many people are coming from different marketing channels, are they converting, what's the abandonment rate, and so on, in order for them to actually optimize their investment and make changes in the e-commerce funnel, for example. We also do have analytics projects or programs related to the actual CIBC clients or banking clients, like you guys, or like myself. So we look at the personalized insights, or ability to produce personalized insights, and I think that's where the future is in general. A lot of this analytics hype right now is about personalization. You may see different images surface to you when you come to the website. You may have different insights produced for yourself compared to, I don't know, your mother, your husband, and so on. So we look at things like unusual transactions to warn our customers. We look at things like category spending. So if you've been spending for, I don't know, coffee and and bagels every day, and all of a sudden, like, you're above your budget, we would like to send you certain notifications, right? So all of that is to help our customers make better decisions with their personal finances. Overall analytics, going back to the initial question, I think it's the purpose of analytics is to make better decisions, and regardless of what you're talking about, like whether it's disability insurance, or whether it's category spending for our customers or us understanding the UX on the website. It's all to optimize the resources and efforts that you put in and using the data to help you with that.
Thank you so much. No, I think those are wonderful, wonderful use cases to talk about. And I think you have sort of seen the journey of how it could evolve from very simple data insights like reporting to moving all the way to predictive analytics in terms of disability and category spending, etc. So that's a wonderful journey. All right, moving on. One of the key questions and struggles that organizations might deal with is where does the data come from and how do we make sense of it, right? So depending on the maturity of the data function within an organization, they might have a lot of data that they've already collected, or they may not know where to even start with the data journey, right? So based on that, I mean, some of the questions, Theodore, you already brought up in your earlier answer with, extraction, transformation, and load. So like, how do we manage it? How do we clean it so that it makes sense? And then finally, how do we tell the story with the data that's collected, right? So if you could shed some light on, those challenges around specifically managing data, maybe collecting data, cleaning data, managing data, and then positioning data to tell the right story, those would be great as well. So maybe start with Kira and then come back to Theodore.
Sure. When it comes to data, challenges is the first word that comes to mind. There are lots of challenges when you work in the data analytics team or data science team, and especially in a big company like the bank. The data is stored in multiple sources, and there are lots of different owners of that data. So I would say a good chunk of my job, maybe even more than 50%, is actually negotiating and talking to the data owners and trying to obtain access to the data and merge and consolidate that data in order for us to actually produce meaningful insights. Unfortunately, we don't have one universal system and sort of one-stop shop for all the customer data or all the transactional data. There will be credit cards data sitting in one spot, and then deposits data in somewhere else, and you have to go patch it and put it all together. The other challenge is the volume of data, right? So right now we live in the world where we are constantly, every minute, we are producing like gigabytes and terabytes of data, right? That needs to be stored somewhere. So I'm sure you've heard about the edge computing and the challenges that not just CIBC, but all the organizations are going through right now. In order to store this data, and the questions arise, do we even need this much data, especially after pandemic? So some of this data from the past actually became obsolete, right? So there were models of predicting consumer behavior, and then pandemic happened, and all of a sudden everybody's online. So you actually cannot use those models anymore. Do we need that historical data or that much of data? So part of the new challenge is actually to produce insights and AI models with the small data, with the small amount of data. So this big buzzword of big data is actually kind of going away a little bit. Yes, so that's one of the challenges. Another challenge is building the data-driven culture. And I don't know, maybe if it's the same in Manulife, but I feel like a lot of companies are struggling with that. And all the greatest insights and the stories and models actually die at the very last mile. So because they're never operationalized, they're never acted upon. So we struggle with bringing the business practitioners on board. We struggle with convincing them that this is the way to make decisions. I believe we are not the only ones from what I've observed in many other organizations, but it's changing. So the good news, it's slowly changing, and I think it depends on how you want to structure your teams, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but where analytics sit in terms of the organizational structure and how you partner it with the business teams, and so that actually the insights are used and the insights are operationalized. The other challenges, lots of them are privacy issues, right? The risks of actually we were just working on the project of migrating a bunch of data into cloud, and especially with the bank, the security is super high. It's on top, right? Like we called your some of the most personal data you may have in terms of the transactions you make with your credit cards, and nobody wants to jeopardize it in any way. So lots of issues that we face with the InfoSec in order for us to actually consume the data. A lot of the times we just simply can't get access to the data. It's so restricted, and for good reasons. But yeah, so those are the things that come to my mind, and maybe you can share a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that data is often synonymous with with challenges. I have an old colleague who I borrow this expression from him. Hope he doesn't mind, but he used to say the devil is in the data. You know, because it's very detail-oriented work. You know, on paper, you look at the project that you have to do. You have to bring the data from point A to point B, and then build a report and analyze it. But it can easily become 10 times longer than you think it would have taken you, just because there's quality issues with the data. Then just when you were looking at a piece of data and you thought it meant A, it actually means B. So that easily makes the life of project management, let's say, within data very, very difficult, and projects tend to go on for a long time. I just want to echo the culture comment that you were mentioning. So it is a challenge in the sense that you have people skilled in data, and then you have people that know that they want something related to data, bridging the gap between the two, and really arriving at data solutions that are exactly what the business needs. I find is an area that needs a lot of work, right? And getting folks to get into what they could get out of data, and then asking for it more specifically, or vice versa, meeting in the middle somewhere. So the data culture thing is key. The other point is around just capacity. There's so much demand for data work within our company. At one point, the team size is never going to be enough to meet all that capacity. And then you throw on the challenges of when you actually want to get started. Like I was mentioning before, it's hard to find the data, and it takes a lot of effort. So I feel like the name of the game is having a really, really good plan and a good strategy, so that anytime you're touching a piece of data for one project, you have a good architecture and way of making sure that piece of data now is forever available for everyone else to use in a way that's like super clean, as opposed to just doing the project and then moving on, which unfortunately tends to be what maybe happened in the past at some places I've worked with. And so then you inherit something that's very complex to work with. So having a good plan and making sure that each business project on your roadmap will in some way contribute to making your data better. So then the 10th project you do has a much easier time of leveraging the data. So that.
Great, thank you. So I just want to come back to Kira for a bit, because you touched upon something that is important, is not to get hung up in the buzzwords. So for me, I always tell my students that small data matters more than big data. So it's like, how close can you get to the data to really zoom into the challenges there, and to figure out what can I really do with this data? Can I tell this story, right? So that's much more important than following some buzzwords out there. And then with Theodore, I think the demand and the capacity is music to my ears, because we are building workforce for you in the program. So hopefully the students will be engaged with recruiters and others. So this is part of the demand that we are also seeing as from employers. So it's a response to that demand as well. And I think these are great insights that the students are getting right away when they start our program. So that's fantastic. Thank you. The next section is about the skills. So what should we be doing in terms of understanding how to build a career, and what are the skills that we need to do that, right? So in terms of using those skills, it goes back to the concept of the structuring and the governance. So again, coming back to governance, controls and risk management in terms of the teams and the capacity that your organizations have. So we've seen all types of examples of teams being structured, especially data teams, which may be very different from regular, technical teams, where you might have one team that services the entire organization, and then they pick and choose who works on what project. In other organizations, we have teams that are dedicated to projects or dedicated to different business units. So it would be great if you can shed some light on how your teams are structured within your own organizations, and whether you have certain maybe pros and cons in doing it one way or the other. I know Agile is a big way of managing teams and projects, but it would be great if you could also shed some light on other methodologies that you guys might be using. So maybe we'll start with Theodore first.
Sure. Yeah. Like organization is very important when it comes to data and how you structure things specifically. Generally speaking, I'm a believer that doesn't matter the org, if you have the right people and you could overcome different org structures and get the work done. But when it comes to data, I guess in French, nerf de la guerre, the main battle is understanding the data. So whatever structure you choose, you need to make sure that, we aim to make sure that people are super close to the business unit and they have time to work closely with one business unit and learn about the data. It takes months and years within our teams. Like once we onboard, project after project, after 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you start seeing a real productivity increase of that one individual. So it makes a lot of sense to keep teams focused close to the business unit. But I guess the other side of it is you also want a certain amount of centralization, because it's such a specific skill, and you want folks that are just working with data to be very close to each other within the company. So I guess the balance that we've achieved, and we've changed a few times, but the balance that we've achieved on the data engineering side has been to create what we call our Canadian data office, and to, within that data office, to have teams specifically associated with each business unit to create that link with the business unit. And often we'll have folks that were working in the business unit be part of those specific teams. So yeah.
Thank you. Kira?
Yeah, I just learned a great insight about the centralizing the team and associating it with different business units, because it's something something that we struggle with as well. I believe at CIBC, the latest I heard, that there's more than 10-15 different analytics teams. So they're all attached to different business units. There will be credit card analytics, there will be investment and deposits analytics, and so on. We are particular from digital space, so we work for our digital customers, internal customers and external customers, obviously. But it is a struggle sometimes, just because one analytics team produces some sort of a model or results, and it's different from what the other team produced, or there's like fight for different access, and it can present certain challenges. But in terms of how we organize our team in digital, we do work in agile methodology. So we have a team, a working team that are busy doing some sort of project for delivery project. So there will be, let's say, a new feature on the mobile app, and there is a dedicated team with the project manager and the scrum master working on that. And there is an analytics lead assigned to that pod. So we call them the pods. So this way, we actually got to this structure quite recently, maybe a few years back. And I feel like it improved a lot our efficiency, just because we actually have analytics lead present at the table from the very beginning. So what we used to have issues with was that analytics would be engaged at the very end. So most of the times it's too late for us to actually, put the tags in the right spot. We don't have the time, or then obviously that impacts the quality of data that we consume, and it's a downfall effect, right? Then their output is also not really at the level that we would expect it to be. So it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure you've heard of that. Right now, we do have the analytics lead present, discussing with them, even while we are still strategizing and like discussing of what kind of feature we would like to implement. So there is a competitive research, and there is somebody who can come up with the numbers and say, hey, like our consumers are actually showing these behavioral patterns, and they would really prefer this type of e-com like channel on the side or whatever that they're working on. So agile is the way to go for us. And obviously once the dashboard is produced and we tell the story, we also have been working with these people for a very long time, sometimes even years. And there's the relationship built already and established. And most of the times there is that trust. So remember when I talked about the vast analysis done at the very last mile, that's how we tackled the issue of operationalizing and actually implementing the insights that we produce.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up on that is you mentioned trust, right? So one of the things with decentralizing versus centralizing is, of course, how many people might actually touch that data, right? And so what are some of the processes that might be in place? Like, do you offer training? Do you do, in terms of ethics and users of data and values that you might inculcate in these teams? What sort of checks and balances might be in the system or in the processes that you create? Maybe we can start with Theodore and then come back to Kira.
Yeah, like confidentiality and privacy is really within Manulife, and I'm certain within CIBC is going to be the same, but it's really something that touches the entire company, not just people working with data. So it starts from that. There's policies and there's trainings that each employee has to go through on a yearly basis. Then when you get into the data teams, it's obviously way more accentuated, because these the folks within the data teams will often have for the different use cases that they're involved with, they'll try to they'll have access to data that at times could be extremely confidential, and so we just really attempt to use the policies and the practices of giving the least amount of access that is absolutely needed in order to accomplish the job. And it's difficult. Like from a technical perspective, it's extremely time consuming to actually implement that principle. But it's mandatory, right? So it just has to be part of the budgets of projects and of the department, in terms of how we make sure access is given just to the level that's needed and not beyond. And it's very much a cultural thing, because there's always many ways you could interpret a policy or a rule. So I really appreciate to see my team and members of my team saying, no, sorry, this is not right. We're about to do this. We didn't mean wrong, but it was about to bring us in a gray zone. So why don't we take a step back, do it in this way, and then that's right there, a cultural exercise, because the younger people that are joining the team are able to to benefit from that.
Thank you. That's great. Kira?
Yeah, the data governance is definitely a big topic for the bank, for sure. I echo what Theodore was saying about the restricted access, and I feel like it, just like anything else, has pros and cons. So definitely when you have limited access, you only work in that space, and that helps with the issues of privacy and confidentiality. However, when there comes a moment and you need that extended data, or you would like to complement your analysis with something else, the process to get access is so long, and it requires going through so many different data owners and InfoSec approvals, and there's a lot of approvals, and your manager, and going all the way to the top, that it almost in a way negatively affects the output that we produce, or it extends our timelines most of the times. And the trust, the question, right? You were talking about trust. I believe that's the most important thing, to actually implement what you're producing, right? So working with the business and going to them before they actually implement the project, because they need to tell you what they would like to see, right? Like you can't just go fishing and start catching all kinds of fish in this ocean of data, right? You need some sort of direction. And that direction will only be coming from your board or your CEOs or like the business unit you work with. So they need to give you that question of why you need this analysis, what you're planning to do with that. And that's when the analyst can actually pick it up, go and, he was told to catch, I don't know, stingray, and now he'll actually just fish for stingray and not bring a bunch of other things, right? And spend time doing that. So I think that's very important to have that relationship in place.
Thank you. I'm going to use the fish analogy next time I talk about big data and small data, because that's fantastic, right? Bring back stingrays, not sharks. So that's excellent. So let's come back to the HR part, right? So what are some of the skills? Because when I manage the program, the question that students ask me the most is, what type of skills do we need to be able to find a job, right? Some of them are looking at hard skills, which is I need to know a particular program, I need to know how to code, and then others are focused more on sort of the managerial aspects of how do I deal with people and processes and procedures and all of that. So what types of skills do you look for when you're hiring for positions within your teams or within, in general, the data teams in the organization? And I know students both in the audience and online are very interested in the answers to these questions. So start with Kira, please.
Sure. Remember how I told you that if you're over 30, you don't have a degree of analytics and you got into this field somehow from some sort of background. Some people got in there from marketing communications, others from IT, another one from engineering, and so on and so forth. So even up to this moment, even though we have this type of programs and they teach you the technical stack and they teach you a lot of the necessary skills to actually be successful on the team, I still believe that the most important one is natural curiosity and this mind that is constantly asking questions of why. You can learn Python, you can learn Adobe, you can learn any type of tool. I think it's fairly easy. I mean, you need to put some effort, and but being a very great analyst versus being a good analyst is the difference between the two is actually that natural curiosity, right, of asking the right questions to the right people. I always look for that in the interviews. So when I have people coming and, obviously we go through some standard interview questions, but I always look for signs of that natural curiosity. People that I hired, and I noticed, observed that type of behavior actually ended up being, the top performers on my team. And yeah, the combination of hard and soft skills. I feel like the analyst has three different components. It's technical skills, obviously. It's storytelling skills, and it's soliciting requirement skills. So you are not just the technical person. You won't be just, by next to your desk and constantly writing the code. You will be doing part of that, but a lot of it is actually talking to people as well. First, starting with requirements, understanding what needs to be done, what does the business require to actually improve their decision making. There may be different needs in different stages. And then the last thing, the storytelling piece is super important, and I can't stress that enough. I've seen great analysts, but and they really rock the data piece, but then they go to the executive board and they can't present their results, then they're not heard, and like people don't understand what they're talking about, right? A lot of the times we use a lot of technical terms, but then when you go to C-suite, it's a very different conversation. So there can be three different people, or it can be like all these different skills can be in one person. So the superstar will be that one person that has all three. it's really hard to find. I've been hiring for more than 5 years, I think, and I've been on interviews for over 10 years, and it's really that diamond that you have to find. Sometimes you get lucky, but yes, I think if you want to be really, really successful in that field, if that's really your passion, because you need to be passionate partially about that, right? I believe in anything you do, you need to be passionate and choose your career that you really feel like that's what you enjoy doing every single day. Then try to work on what's missing in those three.
Thank you. Theodore?
Yeah, really great answer. And I definitely look for all those skills that you're mentioning, and you put it really eloquently. Like when it comes to skills, to answer the question, one thing we could do is break it down too by the types of roles. So there's a notion of more of someone working in architecture, data solution architecture, somebody else more data engineering, which is closer more to a developer, data analyst, which you touched on, and of course more someone in advanced analytics or data scientists. So those are slightly different profiles, and so for sure you might look for slightly different things within each of those. So maybe to start with the hard skills, like Kira was mentioning, it's super. To some extent, it's like a table stakes, but it's also really, really important that that those are demonstrated very clearly within. Whenever we do interviews, we're pretty. It's pretty much a first filter to make sure that someone is demonstrating that they're up and running on the hard skills, because we've had mixed results when we give the benefit of the doubt on the hard skills. So like it's sort of a hiring policy that it's become on our side to really make sure that the first filter is the hard skills, and to, let's say if we take the role of a data engineer or a data analyst, really showing that SQL or whatever languages are being used, the Python and the Spark, like really demonstrating like a full mastery of that, I think is important. And then definitely we fall into the call them soft skills, which is the requirements gathering, the storytelling, and for me the other one that I'm pretty I look for a lot. I gave someone an earful about it this morning, but was around project management, and not necessarily project managing the big project, but just your own work. Like that, being able to demonstrate, here's where I am, here's what the project wants of me, and here's all the steps that I'm going to get there, and then being able to just to stay on top of that. Unfortunately, it's not always inherent in everyone to have that skill. So, and it is something totally learnable. So yeah, hard skills, and then business requirements gathering. Maybe that's the hardest one. I think you mentioned that too. Just the storytelling, business requirements gathering, and that's where maybe I'll plug the Concordia approach or the JMSB approach, which is like case competition. When I was part of the MBA, or even after, for a while I was involved as a coach, but just getting yourself involved in cases, and like, I don't know how it works, I think you would know best, but making sure that you gain that experience in terms of understanding the requirements, telling the story of the requirements. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very reassuring to hear from both of you, because we emphasize experiential learning in our classes, and the MSc program has a co-op as well. So there's a big emphasis on doing things with your hands and actually learning hands-on and experiencing those, experiencing through those skills that you've talked about. So we really force our students in a way to learn about what they would be doing in industry while they are at school. So that really brings a lot of those skills automatically to the table. So it's very reassuring that we are in the right direction, and those are the skills that you're looking for, and that's fantastic. Thank you. So moving on, let's talk about the future a little bit, right? So we've seen your journey now from, going from working with data to now what is called analytics. So where do you think we're going from here, and what should students be watching out for in terms of how they keep an eye out on what's evolving out there? So maybe a little bit about the field itself of where analytics is going, and then a little bit about what students should do to prepare themselves for jobs that may not even exist right now, right? So we'll start with Theodore and come back to Kira.
In terms of the field itself, or let's say just the focus of our teams internally, we're overcoming the phase of just generally speaking, right? We're overcoming the phase slowly but surely of spending a lot of time of working with data and preparing the data and all that, and so hopefully slowly but surely it's really shifting to using the data, be that more on the analytics side or on the BI side, or a blend of the two. And there's also the technology itself, like not to plug any vendor in particular, but things like Power BI, Microsoft Power BI, the tool itself is making it much easier for users to, even users that have less knowledge of data analysis techniques and all that, but it's making it so that folks could go a lot further themselves in terms of using data to drive their own decisions and to do that on a regular basis. And slowly but surely we're getting to that point where we said that every single business process, every single decision will eventually have a heavy data component to it. Like, I guess we're just seeing that more and more and more. And then, sorry, the other part of the question?
What should students be watching out for, sort of evolving technologies or evolving skills?
Yeah, I think, like, I would come back to what we were just chatting about before. Just really cover those hard skills, get a lot of practice on the hard skills as well as the soft skills. Like, I think that's really going to prepare for just for launching into the job market.
Thank you. Kira?
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning are the new hot topics nowadays. And the beauty of those things is speed. So the software itself is capable of compiling the data way faster than a human being can. It's capable of processing the data way faster. It's processing higher volumes of data, right? So what is the role of analysts in 5 years, in 10 years? We are slowly adopting the technologies right now, but they're still in prototype and proof of concept stages. But I mean, in 5 years, once, or maybe even a couple of years, once you guys graduate, it would be widely adopted. I believe the analyst is becoming more like a consultant. So it's more of an advisor role other than data crunching role. And that's why I put even more emphasis on those soft skills, understanding the business, asking the right questions. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Really understanding the nuts and bolts of the business that you're in, right? The insurance business is different than retail business, and how do you make those sales? How can you optimize for the costs or investments that you're making? How can you improve the financial results of the company? Because that's what people care for, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, you're hired to fulfill the need of either saving costs or improving the profit of the company. So you need to constantly ask yourself, like, what's my job and how can I contribute? And on the other side of things, we are moving to the world of even more digital world. We're talking about metaverse and our presence and Meta. we're talking about augmented reality, right? So maybe in a few years, we can be sitting at home and, you pop up in my living room and it feels just like, we're sitting right here. So there will be wearables and glasses. We already have, I'm not wearing my Apple Watch today, but we do have some wearables today, right, that producing the data. And so there will be more of that. How will we track that? How can we use that? How can we adopt that data and incorporate it into our models and really look at customer touch points with different channels? Like right now we have in person, right? You can go to the branch. If I talk about the bank, you can go to the branch, you can have an interaction there. You can call and talk about your lost credit card. You can do it online. You can open up your app and you can report your card as lost or stolen and whatsoever. So right now we are struggling with just looking at all these different touch points and omni-channel introductions. But what's going to happen in 5-10 years when you can put on the glasses and talk to customer service representative of your financial advisor just in your living room, right? Like how are we going to collect that data? So a lot of interesting questions, and going back to the skills, actually, I thought about something else, the continuous learning. I think if you choose the job of technology or in technology field or in analytics field, you sign up for this journey of nonstop learning. Like things change on a daily basis. There is new tools, like even the tools that we've talked about today, they didn't exist 5 years ago, right? Like Power BI, I don't know, like Alteryx and anything, it existed in different form. So you constantly have to polish your skills. You have to be on top of your game. It's not a traditional industry where you can learn, I don't know, even accounting, for example, the foundations are still the same. Yes, there are different things, but this is relatively new industry, especially if you talk about web analytics, that's only maybe 10 years or so. So things like that, like education programs, standardized and more formal programs like MSCs, or just your own learning on YouTube or listening to podcasts. I'm currently on mat leave, so I have a 9-month-old, and the only time I have for myself is that 1 hour that I go for a walk. So I make sure I listen to some great podcasts, and it's really exciting. It actually opens up, a lot of new perspectives for me, just being out of touch with, my own team. So yeah, things like that, and we'll see what the future involves.
Thank you. I think it's been a fascinating discussion, and we could go on and on, but we have to move on to the Q&A. But I'd like to thank you for your insights and your time, and I think for sharing your knowledge and experience with our students. This has been really true to the theme of nuts and bolts. We've really discussed the nuts and bolts here about business analytics. So it's fascinating and fantastic. Thank you. So I'll hand it over to Anna for the Q&A.
Thanks, Sujit. I don't know if anybody in the space has a question, but if you do, a reminder, raise your hand, and one of the ForSpace team members.
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay. Beyond that, I have one little question on the Zoom. Maybe I'll read out as we get a mic to someone in the space. So it was a question from Vlad to Theodore. Vlad says, from their very limited experience, a data project suits the requirements and objectives of that project alone. So how do you go about making the insights from one data project modular enough to be transferable and reusable to another project? Theodore, thank you.
That's a great question. I would say it's really around preparing the data and making sure that it's not half done. It was more from like a very simple perspective that I was bringing that point to say, for sure, a metric might be good just for one project and not good for another project, but there's also a way of making sure that the underlying data and the metric that you are producing is super well integrated into the processes and making it so that the definition is really clear. It requires more work, doing your groundwork to say, oh, what data is out there already? Oh, this other team uses a different definition. Let me talk to that team, and let's have a governance organization that is able to make a final decision. From now on, this piece of data will, we will define it in this way. So that's where we're saying, like, it's simple on the one hand, but on the other hand, it takes a whole lot of work to make sure that the, as you're working with data, you're leaving it in a state that it's better than what you found it and ready for the next project to hopefully use it, even though they'll probably have to adapt it to their needs.
Thank you, Theodore. Vlad, I hope that answers your question. Maybe now we'll go to the space for, I think we have time for a final question.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions, but the first one is about the domain knowledge of what we are working on. See, let us say you are working in CIBC and you're working at Manual Life. As an analyst, when we are gathering data, we need to, gather some particular data what is really required for us. So in order to gather that particular data, we need to be, having some really good knowledge on domain. So let us say if I start as a fresher, how would I fill the gap? Like, will there be any proper training for me? And how do you guys managing currently right now? Yeah, I just wanted to know more about that.
Kira, yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand the question. So when you start as the junior analyst, for example, on the team at CIBC, you're curious on how you are gathering the data for the analysis that you need to produce, or is it more about the industry itself, like the knowledge of how financial banking works? Or
it's about gathering data from a model which I'm going to build, and it's also depends upon the domain knowledge of that, right?
Okay, so if you're being asked to build a model, I think overall, most of the times you will be provided with the data, or you'll be provided with the access to the database, right? And then you have to go in and write your query and extract the necessary data that you need. But that comes back to that importance of working with the business practitioner and somebody who really understands the business before you're actually at that point yet, right? Like you work side by side and you understand that, for example, for credit cards, you need I don't know, the transactional data that sits in that database, and then you connect it with the customer data, customer attributes data, and you create your own sort of data set. I don't think we have the data sets already created for you because it may be a brand new model, but if you're working on an existing model, you may have access to something that was already produced in the past. In terms of the actual business knowledge and the industry knowledge, we do have a lot of training. So I think we've spent quite a bit of time overall in thinking on onboarding of our junior analysts. We start with co-ops a lot of the times. We actually have a successful history of hiring co-ops. For some reason, yeah, we've had, I guess, 90% conversion rate on all the co-ops at some point. And they're being provided with a bunch of resources. So there is a lot of data dictionaries there, so you get familiar with the data structure. We encourage a lot of the times the coffee chats. In pandemic, it was a little bit more difficult. Right now, it's a little better in the office, but that's something that I always say to my new hires. Like before you get to actual work, you get your hands dirty with the data, you go and sit beside and shadow like somebody from the business, or go grab a coffee, or go for a walk with somebody else and just talk business. I think that's been really, really good for us. I hope that answers, but if not,
yeah,
thank you so much. No, that answers the question. Thank you.
So I have one more question. Can I go for that?
Anna, do we have time for one more, or?
Well, we are coming to 1 o'clock. It's really up to the panelists if they have another minute to answer.
Another minute. So quick answers. So yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know the innovation that is currently happening in the field of analytics in your particular industries.
Sorry, you're mentioning innovation that's happening
in the field of analytics in your particular industry.
I think Kira touched on it a lot. It's just really the machine learning and that 5-6 years ago it barely existed as a field, or maybe it's longer. I don't know. Time flies, but and so being able to build a model based on machine learning and the libraries was just emerging, and whereas now the use of those in order to build your different models and predictive models are becoming way easier for developers and way more accessible. So So I think that's a huge part of it.
Thank you. Kira, do you want to add quickly or?
No, I think, yes, definitely this is the primary topic about the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how we can bring things on board. Moving to the cloud, that's another hot topic. So getting that data from somebody's computer and actually making it accessible to everyone in the organization. Again, because of the speed issues, right? So we're collecting so much data at this point that we need something to process it way faster than we used to. The other things is really we're exploring personalized insights a lot. So we're putting a lot of focus on how we can, using machine learning again, and we have some vendors on board, how we can produce some personal content and related to your banking behavior, obviously, to really help our customers and enable them to make better decisions in their personal finances space. That's something we're still working on. Obviously, data is not 100% clean, and we have certain glitches in the system, and but it's a continuous process, and hopefully we'll get to a safe space where we can actually predict what's going to happen if you continue your spending, for example, and have some sort of an accurate view of your personal finances. I think that would be great. Again, lots of people are maybe in the branches are not going to have a job anymore because you can do everything online. You can just go and pay your bill. I don't know how many people still go to the branch, but I think that's going to continue to decline, and everything is going to become more and more digital. Similar to AI and machine learning taking away that human processing piece of data, right? It's the same concept, and it's more of a consulting role because you can do everything online. So that's what we're working on, and there's some other NDA projects I can't disclose, but those are also exciting ones.
That's understandable. We have exciting times ahead of us, in other words. So, thank you.
Alrighty, well, I'd like to extend a warm thanks to the organizers of this event, as well as the panelists. Thank you for so much for coming in person into Force Space. It was great to have you here. Everybody who joined us in the space or over Zoom, there was a lot of interest, speaking of hot topics, a lot of interest in this conversation. And I know a lot of folks couldn't make it last minute, but good news, we'll be able to send the link to the stream, the recording that's currently available on Concordia University's Fourth Space YouTube channel to everyone who signed up for this event, so you can rewatch it in your own time. Thanks, everybody. We're going to close up the Zoom now and wish you a great afternoon. Bye. Take good care.